Hey everyone, this is the top 5 classic movies of the 1980s. And before I get started on the list, I should point out that what I mean by classics of the 80s isn't these are the most representative of what the 80s were all about, but these were the best examples of film, cinema in Hollywood at this time. And so let's go ahead and get to it. The first movie on my list is Do the Right Thing.
Yo, Mook. Mookie.
What?
How come you got no brothers up on the wall?
Man, ask Sal, right?
Hey, Sal, how come you got no brothers up on the wall here?
You want brothers on the wall? Get your own place. You can do what you want to do. You can put your brothers and uncles and nieces and nephews, your stepfather, stepmother, whoever you want, see? But this is my pizzeria. American Italians on the wall only. Take it easy, huh?
Do the Right Thing came out in 1989. It was directed by Spike Lee. It won 0 Academy Awards, although it was nominated for 2, one for screenwriting and one for supporting actor for Danny Aiello. At the box office, it made $37 million, and it is number 96 on AFI's list of top 100 movies, which I think it's only going to keep going up.
I'm making trouble.
You're a real ball breaker. Always coming in here looking for trouble, huh? Suppose I busted your head. How would you... Mookie, you want to get your friend out of here?
What, are you gonna kick me out now? Are you gonna kick me out, huh?
No, I'm not kicking you out. You're kicking yourself out.
What? Look, we got some brothers up on the wall, you know?
go.
Malcolm X, Nelson Mandela, you know, Michael Jordan.
Do the Right Thing, when it came out, it was one of the most original movies that Hollywood had ever seen. It was just an amazing breakthrough for this new filmmaker, Spike Lee, obviously, and his voice and what he represented we had never seen in movies before. And so it was so refreshing. And so I just want to point out some of the real groundbreaking things that you'll see in this movie. First of all, when you watch it, pay really close attention to the camera and where Spike Lee puts the camera and the angles that he's using, the perspectives that he's using. It's very original, and there's a lot of inventiveness and creativity and just experimentation that you don't see in bigger Hollywood movies usually. And just, you see, this is a filmmaker that's uncompromising in terms of like, this is my vision and this is how I'm going to convey what I want to convey. Not just the subject matter, but also the formalism of the camera work and the set design. It was all on display, especially, you know, just a lot of amazing camera work. Another thing that really stands out if you watch this film today is just the cast, and it's just like all these people that we're so familiar with now, and they're just so young. I mean, we've known Spike Lee his entire career, but you know, most of all, it may be Samuel L. Jackson. He's so young in this movie, and it's just like, oh my God. So that's amazing. And of course, Danny Aiello, he won, or he didn't win, but he was nominated for the Oscar. And I've always loved Danny Aiello, and he was particularly great in this movie. It's probably my favorite role that he ever did. But also, it's just kind of sad that was of all the acting performances in this movie, especially you have Samuel L. Jackson, and just like, this is the one they picked out. It's, you know, I guess I'm not going to say anything more about it. You can infer what I'm saying. But yeah, just you go back and you see all these, they're so young and so vibrant. It's just amazing. And finally, just Spike Lee, just his voice as a filmmaker, just how fully formed it was just from the very beginning. And it's just so striking and so overpowering, but in a really good way. You just get kind of consumed by his movies, and you're just like, you feel like you're being taken to this world that for someone like me is unfamiliar. And I just appreciate the artistry and the way that I was mentioning camera perspective, but now just the storytelling perspective of these characters in this world that's so real. But it's stylized in a way that is unique to Spike Lee, and I can't emphasize enough how much I love Spike Lee as a filmmaker, and I think this will, barring any future amazing work, and basically every movie he's ever put out has been amazing, but this is probably going to go down as his most important and his most groundbreaking and his most memorable. This is the one he's going to be most remembered for, and this movie deserves that legacy. It's just an amazing piece of work. So next movie on the list is E.T.
Phone? He said phone? He said phone? Can't you understand English? He said phone.
Home?
You're right. That's E.T.'s home.
E.T. came out in 1982. It was directed by Steven Spielberg. It won 4 Academy Awards, though they were all technical awards. It made a whopping $793 million at the box office, the most ever at that time. And it is ranked number 24 on AFI's list.
What's all this shit?
E.T. phone
Home.
My God, he's talking.
Home.
E.T. phone home?
E.T. phone home.
Well, first of all, I think Steven Spielberg just proved time and time, he is the king of high concept films, and he comes up with an idea and you hear the idea and you're just like, yes, I want to see that movie. You don't know anything about what all you're like, I want to see that movie, and if you know Steven Spielberg's making that movie, you get, oh, it's going to be good. And E.T. is just one of many examples of the high concept film from him, and luckily it really lived up to that. And that, in this case, that high concept was something that would create a whole particular genre, and that is sci-fi for kids, with kids. Like the sci-fi is happening to the kids, and you realize, like, once I say it, you're like thinking about movies from the 80s, and it's like, oh yeah, there's so many examples. Gremlins, Goonies, all kind, like that's more of an adventure than straight up sci-fi, but there's so many examples of the sci-fi for kids, and E.T. is really what started it. And it's this idea of like, one, you're seeing the sci-fi from the kid's perspective. How would a kid see these amazing events? It's obviously very different from adults, and that's why adults in these movies are always the bad guys. But it's also, instead of like the traditional sci-fi where you're wrestling with these big philosophical ideas, and it's often dystopian futures and dystopian pasts and all kinds of like dystopian presence and altered version. But for this sci-fi for kids, I guess now it's evolved into that same thing, dystopia for kids. But at this time, it was lighthearted. They always had happy endings, even if like E.T. a little bit bittersweet, but also dealing with subject matters that were for kids, like being a child of divorce, or dealing with the things that you have to deal with as a child growing up. And so it's not just the sci-fi, and not just the kids, but like bringing it all together so that we're making movies for kids about topics that are important for kids, with a joy and a spirit for adventure and the imagination that's what you want when you're a kid. And so Spielberg was a master of that, and E.T. is just the greatest. And E.T. is just the greatest example of that. And finally, you could say this about a lot of Spielberg's films, but just the way that he controls the frame is so I'd say groundbreaking, but just so masterful, and so many filmmakers we have going today I have learned from that. What I would say about that is like he worshipped at the feet of Hitchcock and other filmmakers that came before him, but especially Hitchcock. And if you watch Jaws, you can see Hitchcock's influence all over it. But now he's taken all of that influence and he's created something new and something that's unique. And so now when you say a Steven Spielberg movie and what it means to, like, you can picture that, and it often revolves around how he controls the camera and what the camera is seeing and how the camera is moving. And basically, E.T. is just a masterclass in how to tell a story and how to use your camera to control how the audience is viewing your story. And yes, some people would say that Spielberg is just manipulating the audience, but isn't that what artists are supposed to do? And so he's being criticized for being the most successful at doing what we expect artists to do, which is, you know, manipulate us into having certain feelings and creating a discussion around that. Next up on the list, Raging Bull.
I want you to hit me in the face.
What?
I want you to hit me in the face.
Forget about it.
No, I want you to hit me in the face. Go ahead. Go ahead, take your
I
best.
said forget about it. I ain't doing it.
Come on, we have fights all the time. When you're worried now you're gonna hit me in the face, hit me in the face. Go ahead.
No.
What are you afraid?
Afraid of what?
Come on, don't be a little faggot. Come on, hit me.
Raging Bull came out in 1980. It was directed by Martin Scorsese. It won 2 Academy Awards, including Best Actor for Robert De Niro. It made $23 million at the box office, and it is ranked number 4 on AFI's Top 100.
Harder.
Yeah?
You throw a punch like you take it up the ass. Come on. Harder. Harder. Harder.
That's hard. You fuck. What do you
Take it
want?
off. Take it off.
Ah, come on. You want to stop now?
Take it
That's
off.
enough.
Go ahead.
That's
Come on. Come
fuck
on.
around,
girl.
man.
Come on.
girl, huh?
I'm gonna smack you again. Throw it again.
That's enough. That's enough.
Harder, harder.
Nah, your fucking cuts are opening and everything. What are you trying to prove? What does it prove?
So I'm just going to start off by saying I think, in my opinion, Raging Bull is Martin Scorsese's best movie. Obviously, he's made so many classic movies that whatever your favorite is, you can't really go wrong. But for my money, this is just an amazing film that, because it's dealing with such a difficult subject matter, and the Jake LaMotta character is it's just difficult and it's tough and honest, but just his fall and basically how he takes other people down with him and the tragedy of his life and what it ends up becoming. It's hard to watch, and it's violent and it's bloody, and the being in black and white doesn't help because it makes it even more stark, the violence. But that's what makes Scorsese. Is he's able to portray that in a way that, while it's like you want to close your eyes, but you also can't look away. And I think that's a really good way of kind of summarizing his movies. Not all of his movies, but I think what the movies that he's most famous for. Of course, you can't talk about Raging Bull without talking about De Niro. This is, probably his most iconic performance, but although again, it's not as fun to watch as some of his others, even some of his other, criminals, gangsters, serial killers, whatever it is. Like even in a movie like Cape Fear, what an awful person he's portraying, but you're kind of like, it's that movie star villain kind of thing. Whereas this character is just so real and so, sometimes depressing, gruesome, violent. You wish he would make different choices. And it's an amazing performance because he gets all of that across. And it's Robert De Niro. I mean, Robert De Niro's the best, and what more is there to say about that? The only other thing I want to point out is this is also Joe Pesci at his best, and it's just like I wish there were more Joe Pesci movies because he is so good. But yeah, they're just two iconic performances. More like those two stand out, but you know, really everyone in the movie was just tremendous. And finally, I think that this may be the best biopic of all time. It's just like with everything that it does, and just like here is the man in full, and all of the good and all of the bad. And I think we understand this character, even if it's not really him. It's just like he is portraying a character in a way that is telling us a lot, not just about this person, but about ourselves, about humanity. And that's what a great biopic needs to do. Next up on the list, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Raiders of the Lost Ark came out in 1981. It was directed by Steven Spielberg. It won 5 Academy Awards, all in the technical categories. It made $390 million at the box office, and it is ranked number 66 on AFI's list of top 100. So the 80s really is Steven Spielberg's decade. He even gets 2 movies on the list, but how could you argue against either of them? Indiana Jones, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know, is just one of the most fun, exhilarating pieces of cinema that you'll ever see. And you have the signature role of one of our greatest, you know, action heroes, movie stars, actors of any generation, Harrison Ford. He's been in so many iconic roles, but Indiana Jones is the one that's going to, I think, live on forever as being associated with him, whereas, you know, obviously Star Wars is a favorite movie for many people, including myself, but that is, as great as Han Solo is, Indiana Jones, this is his movie, and this is Harrison Ford at his absolute best. And there's so many great things that we can talk about. We could talk about Lawrence Kasdan and the amazing screenwriting, and so many other things. But for me, what I think about this movie is that it's really the beginning of the modern action movie, because it's built around the set pieces. And now when you talk about a Marvel movie or a superhero movie or a big action movie, a Bruce Willis movie, whatever, you talk about the set pieces, the big action set pieces where so much is going. I feel like that started with Indiana Jones. And it didn't start with Indiana Jones, because Indiana Jones was a callback to classic Hollywood adventure movies. And so its DNA goes all the way back to the silent era. But the way that Spielberg and Kasdan and Lucas constructed the movie around these particular action scenes where so much is happening in terms of action, in terms of adventure, like stunts, but also forwarding the plot at the same time. That, I feel like, really the modern version of that starts here. And so if it was just those things, that would be enough. But really, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, one of the, like I said, most fun movies ever. You just can't not enjoy it. And finally, last on the list is Tootsie.
Now, what do you mean you don't have a thing to wear?
She has seen me in all of these.
Wait, she hasn't seen you in the white thing.
What, this?
Yeah.
You cannot wear white to a casual dinner. It's too dressy.
You couldn't wear pants?
No, pants, I can't.
What about this thing?
No, I don't have the right shoes for it. I hate the way the horizontal lines make me look too hippie, and it cuts me across the bust.
Tootsie came out in 1982. It was directed by Sidney Pollack. It won 1 Oscar for Jessica Lange, although it had 10 nominations. It made $177 million at the box office, and it is ranked number 69 on AFI's list of top 100.
Thank you. I brought you something.
Oh, Dorothy, you didn't have to do that.
You wouldn't have.
Of all these movies, I feel like Tootsie is the most 80s of these movies. It feels the most tied to the decade. And you talk about a high concept movie, high concept comedy, like this is, it doesn't get much more high concept than, you know, a struggling actor who pretends to be a woman and lands the role of a lifetime and then has to, and falls in love with his co-star and has to, you know, hide who he really is. It's just like, that's what we mean by high concept. And so it really set the template for all these, you know, future comedies, while being just like, it's a really funny movie. And so if you haven't seen Tootsie, I think you're gonna be like, you know, sometimes people have a hesitancy to go back and look at old movies, but this is a movie that I think most people are going to enjoy. I mean, you have Dustin Hoffman in, I'm not going to say his signature role because, you know, he's had a lot of them, and it'd be hard to argue against The Graduate or some of his other more serious movies. But it turns out that Dustin Hoffman's also really funny, and I say turns out, I think it's pretty obvious that even in his serious roles, he has a very humorous persona, and he like that Dustin Hoffman persona is kind of indelibly imprinted on all of us. Anyone that's seen, you know, more than one of his movies, you start to see like, oh yeah, he's kind of carrying that put upon persona throughout his films. But I also feel like it's imperative that we give a shout out to Terry Garr. I feel like she is criminally underrated in the history of movies. She is one of our greatest comedic actors, and unfortunately, because of, I think, the time, she never got to have that real starring showcase role of her own. She always was kind of in service of these other male actors, 9 to 5 being the exception, but that's an ensemble cast as well. And so I just can't help but think about if she was coming of age today, what kind of career would Terry Garr have? Would it be like a Kristen Wiig? Would she be a superstar on SNL and then go on to make, you know, so many classic comedies? I think so, because she is just the best and she's hilarious. And I encourage you, if you watch Tootsie and you like it, go out and see some more of her movies, because she's fantastic. And finally, I think what makes Tootsie so good is the way it just skewers soap operas. It's just like, oh, soap operas are so ripe for comedy. And I guess we do see that still today. Soap operas obviously aren't as important as they were back in the 80s. I think there's no better send-up of the soap opera than Tootsie. While I will admit that the gender politics of it all definitely feels dated, I do think that they were trying to say something that at the time was kind of radical. And so I think they were trying to look at things from a female perspective, to look at it in a different way. It's today, if this movie were made today, it would be very different. That's all I'll say. And so while you can't help but think about it in those terms when you watch a movie like this, I think we can also appreciate that at the time it was doing something that was hopefully moving things forward in a good way. Okay, that is my list of the top 5 Hollywood movies from the 1980s. If you have any movies that you feel like I really should have left out, please feel free to share your opinions in the comments. I will also put in some of my honorable mentions there. And please, if you like this, go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel. Thanks a lot, and hopefully I'll see you guys again next time.
funky drummer. Music hitting your heart, cause I know you got soul. Brothers and sisters.